you go back to Game of Thrones, Catelyn was very happy when they decided to send Jon to the Watch because she was worried that his children might claim Winterfell against her grandchildren. Now her fear is becoming very realistic.
Yeah, but Jon or Tyrion's kid, like
that's what Rob says. That is the argument he
Yeah.
makes. He's like, well, if I give it to Arya, then it's going to be Lannister sitting the throne, and Jon is more of a Stark than them.
Yeah, and Rob's right. Like I said, Rob's wrong on tons of things because he's a boy, but here he's definitely right. Also, like, I don't know why Catelyn has painted Jon as this like power hungry like piece of shit. Like
He's never
Jon
shown
never gives that off.
No, he's never shown any indication to be a terrible person.
No,
like nobody else speaks of him that way.
Nobody.
Yeah,
Literally no one.
The only person, I mean, outside of Alistair Thorne,
Alistair,
nobody hates.
Alistair might agree. Yeah,
outside of Alistair Thorne, nobody hates Jon as much as Cat.
Yeah. I mean, but this is cool because what you're seeing is a bias, right? Through a POV's eyes. Like you're seeing her bias that she can, and we all have these things, right? That we can't get. We don't make sense as human beings. We're irrational a lot of the time. And Catelyn's being irrational here. And it's because it's caused her deep hurt and trauma, with her relationship with Ned and the betrayal that she perceives Jon to be, even though we know he's not.
Right. Which is why the theory, and a lot of people say that she may give up her life. She may be the one to give up her life for the resurrection of Jon.
That'd be sick.
Which would make her arc feel pretty cool.
Oh, it'd feel really good. It would also feel really good if she killed some Freys first, but
yeah, but it's just like system. How do you
get her up there
logistically? What's gonna cause her to hear about that? The only
you got to get her to the wall. You have to get through Red Wedding 2.0. Like it's tough.
The only way I see that happening is this is the only scenario I see this happening. But the problem is the timeline for this because of the way pieces move and travel. The only way I see this happening is if like Davos, it would have to be kind of similar to what we have in the show where Davos sees what Melisandre did by killing Shireen. And then he kicks her out, and then she runs into Lady Stoneheart because she's seeking out other people like R'hllor. You know what I mean? Because in the show, she ends up going down to meet to meet Daenerys and all of these things. So she would have to like meet Lady Stoneheart, be like, "Oh, I can give you final purpose" or something, and then that's how she gets. And then Lady Stoneheart agrees to do it through Melisandre. Other than that, I don't know how you're going to logistically do it, because it's like, how long is Winds of Winter going to be? I mean, like timeline wise, like, are they just going to let Jon's body sit there for months? I mean, it's frozen. Isn't going to decay. I mean, that's the other problem is Jon is, I don't know that Jon can be resurrected at the end of Winds of Winter.
I'd be open to the idea that he could be kept on the sidelines of Winds and he comes back for a Dream of Spring because it shows that like life's coming back. And like, I think thematically you could make that work. And it's probably possible, right? Because if you sideline Jon, you get to spend a whole lot of time wrapping up these other things, right? Like it's almost like putting him on pause and then wrapping up all this other stuff you got to get done at the wall. Eventually,
but Winds of Winter would have to be like 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe, you know what I mean?
Maybe. But here's the other thing. And I actually think this is very likely. We might see an early resurrection of Jon, but I think Jon's going to have to remember what it's like to be human again. Because he's going to go into Ghost. He's going to go into Ghost. So he's going to live on. And it's not going to be a pretty resurrection like it was in the show. Like it's going to be, it's going to be gruesome.
Yeah, I guess there is also the timeline thing where some, and this is why I'm excited for us to do Boiled Leather, the combined read of the 2 books, is that what's happening at the wall could be 3 or 4 days, and some of the other events could be much longer.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, like the timeline that's going on with Tyrion doesn't necessarily have to meet up with the timeline that's going on with Jon.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it could, and then Jon could be resurrected, and then, and like in theory, like chapter like, I don't know, 20 of the book, and then weeks could go by, and then people end up meeting with him later, and so you could do it that way. But that's my biggest argument against the Lady Stoneheart thing, unless the timeline of Lady Stoneheart, is like some of that stuff's happening inside of where Winds of Winter, like if you're looking at a just straight timeline, Like if some of the stuff that's happening in Dance of Dragons is actually happening alongside some of the things that are happening with Winds of Winter, then you could get to that route.
Yeah, I think that the whole Red Wedding 2.0, where like they basically Red Wedding the phrase back, I mean, that's being set up pretty well when you read Feast and Dance. Like
Mhm.
to me, I'd put money on it. Like if I had to put bet on what
Right.
Stoneheart does and wins, I think Red Wedding phrase getting destroyed happens. I actually think that's way more likely possibly than Arya coming back and like doing this big massacre. Like I actually think it's more likely that'll be Stoneheart's piece. But maybe not. I don't know that for sure. But I don't think logistically it makes a ton of maybe I shouldn't say it doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't see how it's feasible to put her at the wall and also like resolve all these things because remember she's not a POV anymore, so we would have to be able to see the rationalization of why Catelyn has changed her tune to resurrect John. You know what I mean?
Through somebody else's eyes.
Yeah, that's going to be tough.
It
That's
could
a
be
tough
It
sell.
could be Melisandre,
It could.
because we know
It
we're getting
could.
Melisandre. We know we're
It could
getting
also be
Melisandre.
Brienne.
Yeah,
Could
that
be
could
Brienne. Maybe she goes.
yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, Lady Stoneheart is up in the air totally. Like we have nothing for her, like no sense of direction. I don't think outside of the fact that she wants vengeance. People have talked about her meeting up with Arya and then Arya having to like kill her mom, but like I've never really understood why she would have to kill her mom. I've seen that a lot. I've
Mhm.
never really bought into it. I do like the idea of Catelyn giving one of her kids life again, but that would require one of her kids to be in danger to where she would die or one of
Yeah.
them would die, right? So does she run into Rick? And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's the end we see to her. I also feel like I remember seeing something where people were speculating that George had kind of hinted that she would have a role to play in the final battle with the White Walkers. So maybe that could be something,
She
you
could
know?
do something similar to what we saw Melisandre do in that
Oh yeah,
in that big battle where Melisandre takes the Dothraki and lights their swords on fire so they can all go die in like 2 seconds.
and then come back the next episode. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yikes!
yeah.
Yeah, yikes!
But I could see something similar to that. Another point I want to talk about, and this kind of goes in a little bit, and this again, think about the lore dumping in this is like unreal. Because
Dude,
again,
there's so much.
there's so much lore, and one of the things I totally forgot about is this is where you get so much of the backstory of Lenny's Hightower,
Yeah,
who is Ser Jorah Mormont's wife, right? And Catelyn even has like a really good line too. She's reflected about like Winterfell and Ned and Bran and Rickon, Sansa and Arya and how they're all gone, and that it's really only Robb that remains. And she said, had there been too much of Lenny's Hightower in her after all, and too little of the Starks, would that I had known how to wield an axe, perhaps I might have been able to protect them better. And at the end, realizing maybe she would have been better off as a warrior.
maybe, but I don't know if that's true. I
Right.
think she
Yeah,
might
not
just be
for
trying to find anything to latch onto, but
rationalize. I think the saddest part about Catelyn's story, especially at this moment, is that all of those things actually aren't gone,
yeah,
and she thinks they
yeah.
are. Like
Well,
Winterfell, like right now they're
perception.
talking about right now it's like, well, we can't go back to Winterfell because it's taken. Well, actually, it's not anymore. Like you could go take back Winterfell. Bran and Rickon, Sansa and Arya are actually all alive, and you could go. Especially Sansa, is alive. Arya's out there. Brandon Rickon's deaths were faked, right? There's some people who believe Ned might still be out there. Might have warged into a raven or something. I don't think so, but you know,
Yeah, it might be a
certainly out there. I will say though, the Ned Stark's bones traveling north business is an interesting little theory to follow along.
mhm, definitely.
But yeah, and it's just now after all of this, her destruction over the course of the last 2.5 books, it's just terrible.
Yeah, she's just been broken down, and it is interesting that her perception of the situation is what's kind of forming her mindset, making her question all these things, when in reality, it's something totally different. It kind of shows the power of perception.